Okay, good evening, everyone. Today is October 26, 2017. This is a regular Board of Education meeting of the Hyde Park Central School District. At this time, well, first let me say that there is no need for an executive session. The first time in my known history that we haven't started with an executive session, but that's another story.
That goes back a century.
Yeah. So, at this time, we'll have the pledge of allegiance, please.
Sorry.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. No, that's only a motion to get back into it. Yeah. Okay, there are no agenda modifications for tonight. May I have a motion to to adopt the agenda, please?
So, second.
Any discussion on that one? All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Let me just go down here. That brings us to upcoming events. So, tomorrow, the 27th, there is no school. It's a teacher training day. On Friday, October 27th, 6 p.m. is a Google Tech Summit at FDR. Tuesday, November 7th is no school because of Election Day. Also Superintendent Conference Day. And on Friday, the 10th, there is no school because it's Veterans Day. Wow. When's learning going to happen there?
We'll figure that.
And the next regular board meeting is on Thursday, on November 16th at Violet Avenue. Okay. At this time, we have the superintendent's report.
You want to do Pride?
Oh, the Pride, I'm sorry. Pride.
It's okay. I'll let Leah go first if you have anything, and then I have some things too.
Sounds good. Okay, so the boys and girls cross-country teams have Mahalls tomorrow. Pep rally 2 weeks ago was a huge success, as was our homecoming dance, and I think we brought in a profit for the first time ever. Mm-hmm. So congrats to student government. The football team beat Kingston 28-14 that evening. Sources of Strength introduced their second cohort on Tuesday with a training session. Academic World Quest started today, and we are hoping to take our team all the way to Washington, D.C. The girls' volleyball team had their senior night, and the fall drama is coming up on November 3rd and 4th, and they will be performing the Panic broadcast of 1938.
I remember it well. No.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. And then I want to add that this is School Board Recognition Week. So I want to read the press release that our own board clerk, Jay McCullough, wrote. The Hyde Park School District is joining all public school districts across the state to celebrate School Board Recognition Week, the week of October 23rd. Our Board of Education devotes countless hours to make sure our schools are helping every child learn while operating in a fiscally responsible way. They steer our operations and education issues in order to provide the kind of accountability our community warrants. School board members give the Hyde Park Central School District's community a voice in education decision-making. Please join us in thanking our board members for their year-round commitment to improving our community through their service. I'm going to give the years of service. Doug Heater, President, 15 years of service. Dan Duffy, Vice President, 14 years of service. Denise Beery, 3 years. Jeff Danielson, 4 years of service. Steve Mittemeyer, 9 years of service. Perry Sheldon, 6 years of service. Mike Zagorski, 2 years of service. And welcome Leah, our student board member, for her first year. That's really impressive. So
Okay, we
join me in thanking.
I can't let that go.
Mm-hmm.
Dan has at least 16 years because he's more. Well, he was on the board before I was. You were.
My remembrance, I didn't trace it back.
No. You were. You were on the board 2 years before I joined the board.
Oh, so you're going to rub it in how long I've been on the board
I just wanted to
still
give you,
and still taking credit for being older than me.
Sure,
Huh?
make
All right.
everybody know that, that you are the one.
We have this golden age thing going back and forth.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we have other pride.
Well, junior here, you mean. I'm 2 days older than he is, so it's like, okay.
So there was a Poughkeepsie Journal article about two of our FDR graduates from the 80s, Rachel Hanman, Kev Wilson, have very successful music careers. They're currently playing in pit orchestras on Broadway. And they're working on a new project, which you can read about in the article. It involves middle and high school, public school music students, and there's information about a scholarship in there that actually our students would be eligible for. So I'm going to add that. And then Haviland had their community night this Tuesday. It was very well attended, as usual. Band students played music in the lobby and outside the building as people arrived. The chamber orchestra played in the cafeteria where people were served pasta and meatballs. Most of the food donated from our vendors, families, PTA, and local businesses. Parents had the opportunity to visit numerous booths to learn more about community services. There was an emphasis on mental health this year. Parents were acknowledged for demonstrating what it means to rise above as an active Haviland community member, and there were prizes donated from local vendors. There were activities for students so parents could enjoy the workshops. Those activities included open gym, karate demonstrations, arts and crafts. I want to mention that Eric Shaw wanted to be here tonight, but Haviland is he's at the PTA-sponsored Harvest Festival, otherwise known as the dance.
Right.
And so he's there.
Yeah.
Also, the PTA book fair was open during community night as well.
It was a nice evening. I was there, Greer was there. It was nice to see parents. I don't know how friendly they all were beforehand, but they certainly were enjoying. In fact, they spent a lot more time in the cafeteria eating and talking than I had assumed that they would. So, and I think that's a good thing. So I think it was very successful.
And then we have formal pride that's actually listed on the agenda.
Right.
So, should I say it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can move the. The expectation, the anxiety, there we go.
Yay.
There
So,
you go.
on October 19th, the Mid-Hudson School Study Council recognized Susan Cerulli, nurse at Haviland Middle School, as one of this year's awards for excellence in the category of People Personnel Services. Please join her colleagues, family, and friends in congratulating Sue for this recognition and providing excellence in support student staff services. It was a lovely dinner. Many of us were there, and we got to meet her beautiful family, for those of us who hadn't met them before, and it was a really proud moment for Sue and for all of us.
Yes, you are.
What I was supposed to, I don't know.
Hey, this is a big deal.
So this is mine.
Yay. Just you wait.
What's this? Oh, thank you, thank you. Oh, thank you.
And not only did she get an award, but she got a decent meal.
I did.
And it was, that's saying quite a lot, actually, for those events. All right.
That was great.
And then,
Super.
you're it? That's it?
I think we'd be remiss, I didn't hear anyone mention it, but the Pops concert at the high
Oh,
school was
yes,
held
absolutely.
yesterday.
good.
And that was such a wonderful treat. It was an absolutely fantastic start to the concert season. They had the symphonic band and the...
I thought the wind ensemble was
Wind
especially
ensemble.
good. So, and
And the combined orchestra.
the concert choir actually sang songs that I could understand the words. They were actually were singing with a melody. I thought it was and I thought it was really good, and I hope that continues in future.
They sang a song that
Concerts.
had no words.
Yes, I'm opinionated, and it is true.
You missed the point. They sang a song without any words, which was...
That was only the beginning. I was getting a little nervous, but by the end of the song, they had actual words that were singing.
No, but it was a fantastic performance.
It was
and-
good. It was really good.
It really was, and it was, and the comparison to see the freshman groups and where they are, and then to see the senior or
Yeah.
the full orchestra, stuff like that. It's amazing, but I've been going to these things for over 40 years. I've had kids 40 years ago that started, and the progression is just absolutely amazing, absolutely amazing. And every year I say, well, they've reached the top. I don't think they understand that there is a top. They keep moving ahead.
Yeah, more? Okay. You're okay?
I'm okay, thank you. Okay, so the superintendent's report, and Doug was just asking if I'm okay because, well, maybe I'm not. Joan Van Black passed away suddenly in her home on October 20th. She worked in the district since 1994, most of the time in the Office of Instruction. Joan was also our tax collector. We mourn her loss deeply and will offer our condolences to her family, especially caring for her sister with whom she lived. Calling hours actually are till 8 this evening, and then the funeral's tomorrow at 10. Many people are going, and we're covering each other for that this afternoon and tomorrow. And Carol Munger also passed away. She worked in food services in Hyde Park for 23 years, and she retired in 2007.
Okay, there's
So-
actually one more, Bob Bajardi.
Yes.
Who passed away recently also, who was F&O director here for a short while. I think he moved on to Millbrook afterwards.
Mhm.
Yeah, so, all right, you did it.
So that was,
You did
thank
good.
you.
You did good.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, that brings us to the summer program updates, which is something
Yes.
nicer to talk about, right?
It is something nice to talk about, and I think I have to go up here for it, right? Or I do it from here now? We just stay here? Either way.
Either-
I'll go here.
To the podium.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll go
It
to the
didn't
podium.
seem to work, so.
I'll try it from there. All right. So we're going to try something, I'm trying something a little different in presentations, and I have to thank publicly Josephine Perino, who helped me put this together. I went to a workshop, and they talked about PowerPoints and how to not bore the people, and so the idea is to have far fewer slides and just tell stories with it. So that's how I'm going to do the summer school report, and let's see how you like it. Okay. In our 2017 summer programs, we served 220 students at the elementary level, 47 students at the middle level, and 138 students at the high school level. Altogether with Camp Invention, we served 505 Hyde Park students in summer programs this year. So I'll start with Haviland Middle School Instructional Summer Program since it was the first year. We're very grateful to the board for bridging this gap between the longstanding elementary program and the high school summer programs. We served 47 students at grades 6 through 8 for 18 half days. Teachers implemented project-based learning as a part of our 4 Cs initiative. And the Haviland program cost is $47,774. So we talk about program cost. And these are some pictures from it. And I want to thank Paul Faziola, who took these pictures and created this piece.
Thank you.
Okay. We served 174 students in grades K through 5 in our Summer Bridge program over 16 half days at Ralph R. Smith. The extended day program served 46 students at grade K through 12 over 30 half days. And the theme was conservation. The activities were project-based and interdisciplinary as a part of our 4 Cs initiative also. Summer Bridge is funded through Title I grant for just under $67,000. The extended year program cost is much higher, $690,000, but it's reimbursed about 80% through the approved rates, 70 to 80% of the total program cost. So that's traditionally how that works. This was included, the cost was included with the special education summer school, but the Title I, pays for that transportation. Okay. The summer food program ran again. We served 2,349 breakfasts, 3,268 lunches. There were very few walk-in participants, which means that the program is really only recommended if it can if it could continue to be coordinated with our own summer programs going forward. So this is a funded program to serve for anyone, and in the ages, school age through age 18, who comes in for free breakfast or lunch, and it's just much more effective in more walking school communities, and so for us, that's not so much the case. So the program is very much viable when we run our summer programs and give free breakfast and lunch to our own kids. We do have community, it's open to community, they just haven't in the last 2 years we've run the program come that much. Okay, and then for the second year, BOCES ran a countywide summer program. It was housed in Haviland. The enrollment was 198 students. 138 students were Hyde Park. That's up 26 students from last year. 30 students from Pine Plains, 1 from Dover, 19 from Red Hook, 7 from Rhinebeck, 1 from Lourdes, and 1 homeschooled student. So our Hyde Park students took 140 courses, passed 24 Regents exams. The program cost was $78,188, but with both these aid, the local share was $36,665. So 30% of our students passed the Regents in August. And they earned 117 out of a possible 134 credits. And this slide actually does have kind of a lot of data, so I'll sit with it for a second. This is how many credits were earned per course. And just so you can see, it's English 9, English 10. That's how that works. And SS is for summer school. So you can see a lot of credits. And then we didn't want to leave out Camp Invention. It's a week-long program. It provided STEAM enrichment, and that is science, technology, engineering, arts, and math, for 100 students. It was housed at Netherwood. This is all grant funded without transportation. That's $25,000, but again, it's grant funds. And I want to thank the board and the community for your support in providing high-quality, responsive services for our students this summer.
Thank you, Vivian. Anybody have any questions?
Yeah, can we get an updated fact sheet that we have
Yeah.
with the cost? Because the numbers we have in here weren't
Oh, okay.
matching what you were talking
Yes, and
about.
I want to thank Linda Steinberg, who helped me with that, because we have pieces that we do, and then when it gets to the business office, we get the real true cost. Sometimes there's benefits and things like that that we don't figure in. So I do have the fact sheet updated, and I'll get that to you. And I believe that's also posted, so I can ask Jay to, or we can post it. There's no reason it can't be public. So we'll put that up there to clarify for anyone who's listening
Okay.
or watching.
Any other questions? Thank you, Vivian. You want to just stay there for the,
Well, the other one I'm just saying, I don't have
Oh.
anything to look at.
okay.
So I'll choose not to. I'll
Come
leave this
on.
here. Or I'll stay, but I need my paper.
Fine.
I'll go back. Okay. The Board of Regents last June did make some changes in the 3 through 8 student testing program. So we thought that it would be a good idea to just let you know what they are. You know, they're posted on the state website, but I went through and got some of the basic information that parents would want to know. So this is for the spring exams in 2018, the ones that are coming up. So the Board of Regents announced this decision to reduce the number of days of student testing on the grade 3 through 8 state assessments in ELA and in math from 3 days to 2 days. This change takes effect beginning with the tests that are going to be administered in the spring in grades 3 through 8. The Regents have, this is a quote, "The Regents have taken a bold step forward today," said Regents Chancellor Betty A. Rosa. "This decision not only reduces the amount of time children will spend taking tests, but also returns valuable instructional time to our teachers. We will make certain the tests continue to provide a valid and reliable measurement of student achievement," unquote. And then Commissioner Mary Ellen Elia said, "The Regents and I continue to listen to the concerns of parents and teachers and to make additional adjustments to the grades 3 through 8 exams. In response to these public concerns, last year we reduced the number of test questions and moved to untimed testing. Today's decision is another important step in our efforts to deliver a rigorous testing regime that is responsive to the public's concerns." So in addition to reducing the number of test sessions, the board's decision had the following benefits. So there's reduced scoring time for teachers, may help enable more schools to transition sooner to computer-based testing, which they're trying to have us do. More quickly implement the recommendation of the governor's Common Core Task Force to reduce the number of days of student testing. The projected trend line for standards and assessment over the coming years. So this past July, adoption of next generation standards, which they did, and they're calling next generation the ELA and math standards, but next generation is a term they've been using for science for the last several years. So we're taking to just calling all the standards New York State Learning Standards. They've dropped Common Core from the lingo. So that's kind of how we think of it, because next gen people still think science. And they're talking about the new math and ELA standards. This year, the two-day assessments and professional development on next generation standards. Next year, 2018-19, two-day assessments measuring the current standards, professional development on the standards. And then in 2019-20, the two-day assessments are going to be based on the next generation standards. So I'll explain this. When they rolled out the Common Core and had so much negative feedback about the tests changing before teachers had a chance to really implement the new standards, what they did is they let us know what the new standards are. We have them already. They're not that different. They took out a lot of the repetition and clarified some things and clarified some terms and again, streamlined them a bit. So they're not vastly different. But they gave us the new standards, and they're giving us 2 years of implementation before the tests are really going to change. So they're in people's hands, and I think what they're doing is, the particular questions they're picking. By the way, all the test questions are now made by teachers. In the past, they were not. So, they're really looking to be more responsive to what people's concerns. The early childhood, the primary standards have changed a lot, more of an emphasis on play. They got a lot of negative feedback about the early childhood ones as being, anti-play or whole child, so they've worked on those. So September 2020 is full implementation of the next generation standards. And when they say that, they mean math and ELA. And spring 2021, new assessments measuring the next generation standards. So this is 2018, it'll be 2018, 19, and 20 before they implement they have the standards in the test, the new standards in the test. So.
Is there any questions?
I added a bit, but
Anybody have any
that's.
questions?
Those are
I
the
have
changes.
one. Did they
Sure.
have parental input on any of this? I mean, I would think
Well,
part of
right.
the goal would be to cut down
Mm-hmm.
opt-outs, would be my guess.
That's their goal in being responsive. I know that there have been a lot of information gathering sessions. I don't know particularly if they had parents, but I know that parents definitely let their voices be heard. And that's been impetus for a lot of the change.
Okay. I guess I'm a little skeptical, having seen so many changes
Mm-hmm.
over the years.
Right.
What's to say the federal government is going to change something in the next 3 years as well, to throw a monkey wrench in this?
Right. We don't know, but I've seen the commissioner multiple times in different venues, and they seem very committed to listening and trying to be responsive and at least have these more teacher-driven and more useful for us. They've talked about getting results back sooner, but we haven't seen that yet.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question. How is this going to affect schools in need and the testing if it's going to be constantly changing for the next few years? Do you
Well,
see that affecting us?
What they're saying is they're not going to change it, but that we are having this time to have professional development and to implement them. So we already have the 2021 standards in our hands. So they're suggesting they're not going to change those. They're just going to give us some time to get ready for the new tests.
Okay. I guess I just have to say it, having done this for a long time, it's hard to have faith in the state doing what's right, shall I say. It's like it's just changed too often already, in my estimation. So that brings us to history of capital projects. Elliot, we got about 3 minutes worth of.
Two, sir.
Okay, all right, good.
No, we'll slow you down.
I will keep with the spirit of brevity. Good evening, everybody. So I guess in the past couple of board meetings, as we've been gearing up for discussions about future capital work, we've talked about where we've come from to kind of get a feel for where we're going. And I was asked to review the last 3 phases of capital work, roughly from 2011 to our most recent project. So I will give you a quick breakdown of that, and then Jason will come up here and explain how the money works for the next capital project, I guess. Excuse me. So we'll start with Phase 2A. We had this affinity for alphanumeric designations for our last few rounds of capital work. So Phase 2A was a total expenditure of $9.6 million. It had sub-phases, 1 through 6, that stretched between 2011 and 2014, that included roof repairs at Violet Avenue, a transportation district office, also some at Roosevelt High School a little bit later on. I want to be very clear that this is large-scale repairs. They were not replaced. No roofs were fully replaced under Phase 2A. Just some patchwork to rubber roofs, reseaming, and some slate work repairs. The security, the video surveillance security system was implemented under Phase 2A2. We did some window upgrades, specifically at the historic buildings, Haviland and Violet Avenue. The district-wide sign project was underneath 2A3. A lot of floor and ceiling replacements that included some asbestos abatements of ACM-containing floor tiles and insulation behind some of our ceilings. The Haviland bus loop was reconstructed, the North Park Bridge was replaced, and the main interior heating lines at Haviland Middle School, those are the 4-inch mains that run down the hallways in what's currently the A section. Phase 3 was our boiler project and our high school athletic arena that included bleacher replacements in the FDR gymnasium. Boilers were replaced, both boiler plants at Roosevelt High School, Haviland Middle School, Ralph Smith, HPE, and Violet Avenue. The only 2 schools that were not included in that boiler replacement project were Netherwood Elementary and North Park Elementary. Phase 4 was our emergency heating project for Haviland Middle School, where we wound up replacing the entire infrastructure of the heating plant, everything but the boilers and the 2-inch or the 4-inch lines that were noted in Phase 2. That included hot water circulator pumps, some doors and windows that's required whenever you're doing an HVAC project. Sometimes you have to change your structures to match current codes, usually fire codes, things like that, or indoor air quality codes. And the mechanical heating equipment, that's the stuff that actually makes the heat in the classrooms and in the interior spaces. So I guess when we talk about that, there's some questions about, we did boilers in Phase 3, we did heat in Phase 4, and there's sometimes there's a little bit of confusion as to, if we did boilers, why are we doing heat, and why are we talking about doing heating and ventilation equipment on the next round of capital work? So we created a very simple graphic, which I'll get to in a minute, that explains kind of the differences of those 2 things. We've got these 3 projects currently in progress. We are replacing the North Park Elementary water well that was approved last year. We're renovating some bathrooms at the Roosevelt High School as a capital outlay project, and we are currently upgrading HVAC controls throughout the district for $1.1 million. And I can show you on this next slide really how that breaks down. So this is a very, very simplistic diagram to show a heating plant in an average school building. You see the boilers there at the bottom. They usually live in the basement, and that's what creates either the steam or hot water to heat the building, but that's not what makes heat in the rooms. That steam or hot water has to be delivered through infrastructure lines throughout the building. There's a radiator or a unit ventilator that actually cranks the heat out. We have exhaust fans and air handlers that move warm air and indoor air through the building, including fresh air. And there's also the need to control all of this equipment, and you can see an example of a digital control system. That little one on the right-hand side there, that blue box with the digital numbers in it, that's the kind of system we're putting in district-wide right now as the $1.1 million project. The boilers at the bottom of the screen we did in Phase 3. The rest of the picture is what we're looking to address in our future work. That's the equipment inside the classrooms that actually makes the heat, the fans and air handlers that move the air through the buildings, and the infrastructure that moves either your steam or hot water through the building to provide heat energy to those pieces of equipment. So that's pretty much it. Anybody have any questions for me?
So if I'm looking at this correctly, you're saying throughout all the buildings, in the process of straightening out the issues we had for an extended period of time at the middle school, we have effectively replaced the boilers, the boiler lines, the HVAC controls, but we did not do much besides cleaning up and repairing the actual radiators in the buildings, right?
if I'm understanding your question correctly, the non-original Haviland Middle School building, so the A and B sections.
Right.
That's what failed on us in 2014, beyond the
Surprise,
boilers.
the new stuff.
Right, so we, right. The stuff in the 50s and the 60s wasn't built nearly as well as the stuff in the 30s. So what we did was, we had already done the boilers, but that wasn't enough. Everything else in the building was original. So whether it was 38, 55, or 57, it was original to the building, and it needed to be upgraded. So we were kind of forced to go ahead and do that throughout the A and B section. We're trying to be proactive at this point and say, well, all of our HVAC equipment throughout the rest of the district is still original, largely original to the buildings. And so instead of putting Band-Aids on consistently, we're going to redesign all of those systems as a whole, like this whole picture for every other building, to bring it up to current standards and really bring it us to current codes for indoor air quality and appropriate heat.
So at this time round, the unit ventilators will be replaced?
Either replaced in kind or a system replacement where we may transition in some areas from a unit ventilator system to a forced air system. I mean, that's the stuff that the engineers are working on right now. But yeah, the intent is to upgrade the balance of HVAC equipment so that everything that helps our buildings breathe is going to be brand new for this new project or within the last 3 years.
And I assume you didn't want to invent a new term for the controls, so you left the AC at the end there, just because it's always been there.
Well,
No implications that we're air conditioning any of the buildings.
no, the engineers have been very clear that we don't intend to provide central air conditioning anywhere. I'll say that twice because I'm sure I'll be told to remind the folks of that. However, we are designing the system so that should any specific areas need to be cooled or otherwise conditioned,
The controls will be in place.
the controls will be in place and the infrastructure will be in place. So in some of our buildings, there's a need for humidity control, which would be a partial conditioning of air, and we'll have that ability to do that as well.
Now, if I'm remembering correctly, one of the significant changes of the controls was the fact that it provided with the ability to control individual classrooms rather than blocks of classrooms in the area, which gave us a significant improvement factor because of the differences in parts of the building, with north side, left side, east side, west side, and what their needs were, that we can now balance it out and get the most efficient utilization of the heat we're producing.
Yes, absolutely. I can actually touch on that very quickly. All of our buildings had a pneumatic control system that was zoned, which basically means we blow air in the lines, and depending on the level of air pressure, things open and close. It was done in clusters, so typically classrooms 4 or 5, 6 at a time, controlled as a group. When we did our EPC project about 13 years ago, all they did was put digital switches on those pneumatic valves. They didn't change the infrastructure, they just changed how it was activated. So you still had the same problem. What we're doing now is an individual room control, much like Haviland's A and B section, where the stat on the wall communicates directly to the equipment in that room and also talks back to the central system. So the room itself is individually controllable, and also we can see every single room on the system to monitor and trend data for that.
So there's a central observance of the school districts throughout every day. In other words,
Absolutely.
we don't have to send somebody out to every building on Sunday to see if it's going to be ready to open on Monday. We have a central place where we can monitor
That's
the
correct.
temperatures throughout the building and get warned in advance, so
We can monitor remotely, we can schedule remotely, we can override so that if there's a meeting that we didn't know about that needs to happen in room B25 at Haviland at 8 o'clock at night, we can kick the heat on remotely before anybody gets there.
Yeah.
And we can schedule things in advance accordingly. Yeah. And it also has built-in alarms that will call us through email or text message to alert if there's a problem with the system or it's operating outside of its design parameters.
thank you.
Anybody
Yeah,
else?
from Haviland. Now, did we change the unit ventilators in A and B?
That's correct.
So what we're looking at for Haviland is only for the radiators and Part C. And this,
Yes, the balance of Haviland remaining that wasn't included in Phase 4 would be the C section, your 1938 section of the building, which is currently direct steam fed from the boiler plant.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Oh, I guess I'll introduce Jason, since he's
Yeah.
coming up. Jason Schwartz from BPD, he'll do the financial piece.
Good evening, everyone. Good to see you all again. As Elliot said, I'm Jason Schwartz from Bernard Dining Incorporated. We're the financial advisors for the district. And this may be a couple minutes late on the Pride section, but I'll just give you a quick update on the last time I was here. I know we were talking about the refunding bond, so I'm sure this has probably come up since then, but we priced that about just under 2 months ago, and that resulted in over $300,000 in savings for the district. So congratulations on that successful pricing of the bond. But the real reason I'm here tonight is to talk about a potential capital project that you're looking at. I know Elliot just gave the update of some of the past projects you've done, and I think you've had the architect here recently at prior meetings to kind of go through some items you might be looking at for a future project. So tonight we were tasked with kind of giving an update of the financial picture of that and how that would look for you. So we have a report with a couple different scenarios for you. Basically, in talking to Linda and Greer leading up to this report, we kind of were tasked with two options to present to you tonight. The first one was, it sounds like in looking with your architect, the scope of a potential project might be in the range of $14 million. So we wanted to take a look at, with your existing debt structure and the reserves available for the district, how much capital reserve would you need to make a $14 million project be essentially no tax increase to the taxpayers? It would fit within your existing debt structure. And then the second scenario was to say you have $7 million in capital reserve, so how large of a project could you do if you utilize the entire reserve at no tax increase? So that's what we have tonight. I'll kind of go through the specifics. And if at any point you have any questions, want to dive in further on anything, feel free to stop me and let me know. So this first page here, we have some assumptions that I'll just go through real quick for how we built the report. And I apologize for the small print, but there's a lot of pieces that go into this. But the first assumption we have is your building aid ratio. So every school district in the state gets state building aid for voter-approved projects. Here at Hyde Park, your building aid ratio is 60%. So for every eligible dollar you spend, you get 60 cents back from the state on that. And then the second factor that goes into the building aid you get back is what we call bond percentage. So that's saying out of the entire project, how much of it would be eligible for aid. So certain scope items might not be eligible, or if you're over aid ceilings, maximum aid ceilings the state sets. So I know you guys are still kind of honing in on your scope, but from the sounds of it, it sounds like most of it is probably eligible for aid. So for now, we've just used 95% as a conservative estimate, but potentially depending on what scope is settled on, that could be up to 100%. The next couple assumptions we have in terms of timing, we're assuming a potential vote date in February 2018, and then that would allow for SCD approval about a year later in January 2019, and then you would go through construction in summers of 19 and 20 and close out the project in 2021. One question I know we get a lot would be, why vote in February as opposed to voting in May when you already have a budget vote, right? One of the key reasons for that is, as school districts, you have a very limited window of time when you can do construction, right? There's not a lot you can usually do during the school year. So those summers are really critical for you. And because of the timeline for after a vote, going through those designs with the architect, submitting them to the state and getting approval, because that generally takes about a year. If we vote in May, then you're really up against it when you get that approval in May or June of 2019 to turn around, bid the project, find contractors that are hungry for work that haven't already lined up their whole summer schedule. So we found that a lot of successful projects vote during the winter, like December, January, February timeframe, so that they can get the extra couple months head start on that SCD approval process. The next couple assumptions there, 7 through 9, we've kind of just laid out the borrowing plan that we're assuming. So we're assuming you go to notes in June of 2019 and bonds in June of 2020, which kind of lines up with your construction schedule. And we're assuming borrowing rates of 4% on a note and 5% on a bond, which are, very conservative and high in today's market, but the reason for that is, as I just mentioned a minute ago, we're not planning to borrow until 2019 and 2020 for this project, so there's a lot that can happen with the rates between now and 2 or 3 years out from now, so building that conservative rate. Any questions on first set of assumptions there? Okay. So flipping to the next page, kind of the breakdown of revenues and expenses for the two options. So in the first option, as I mentioned, we're assuming $14 million of project costs. So that'd be for construction and incidentals. And basically, that's over on the left-hand side under the revenues, you can see, and we'll see a little bit further on in the report how it all lays out, but based on the schedules, you would need just under $2 million of your reserves to make that a no tax increase project. So $1,980,000 to be specific. Then on the second scenario down below, you can see that capital reserve number we've updated to $7 million, the full amount in the reserve currently. So then when we run the schedules on that scenario, it results in a $24 million, $350,000 project that would fit in with no tax increase. So those are kind of just the overview of that, but then we'll get into the specifics on the next couple of slides. Okay. So going the next two slides, just as a refresher for you, we've got the district's existing debt service and building aid, and then ultimately what results in the local share in the far right column. So you can just kind of see in that local share at the yellow highlighted line, that's where we are today, is the $1.5 million of local share. So that's your debt service less the building aid that's coming back. And you can see we're at that level for a couple years before it drops off. And then just graphically, sometimes it's easier for people to see it visually instead of with all those numbers scrunched up on one page. So you can kind of see where we're at right now, and you see that dash bar going across the top of those bar charts is kind of the existing local share and where that drop off is in 2021. And the different colors on this are just the difference between your building and your bus debt, so all your capital pieces put together. And just to point out quickly too, I was mentioning the refunding earlier, that has been factored into this. So this is the current existing debt service with all things 100% updated. So getting into the specific maturity schedule, so we have, this page shows the payback of the $14 million project. So you can see in the first column, we've got the capital reserves of $1,980,000. The next column, column C, we show the principal payback of the remaining $12 million that you'd be borrowing. On column E, we show the interest on that debt, and it all comes together in column F, the annual debt service. So you can see, overall on average, it's just over $1 million of debt service a year, and then you're getting building aid back, column G, at about $741,000 a year. So over in that far right-hand column, the local share equates to about $320,000 a year. With the exception being the first couple years we're a little bit higher because we're filling in the drop in debt service there. So when we take this, the maturity schedule for that specific proposed project, we layer it back in with what we had already shown you on the existing debt service. So we can see how that starts to fit in within the existing structure. But again, I find it's easier to see when we look at these bar charts here, how it all fits in. So the green debt we're now layering in the proposed project, and you can see even with putting this project in as it would be structured, it all stays at or below that line of where you're at in the current 17-18 budget. So that's why we call it a no tax increase project, because it's fitting in within the existing structure of your budget. You wouldn't have to change your taxes at all to fit this project in. Any questions on that first scenario, or? Okay.
Jason?
Yep.
I think I might just want to mention something that we have another drop-off coming in about 2023, but we will have to look at other items in our building condition survey. The survey from 2015 was over $34 million, and we're not addressing all of those issues now, so they'll be on the building condition survey again in 2020 with some additional new items too. So we will have another project that we could look at a future date.
Right, so it's a good point Linda raises, that what's called the building condition survey. You have to do every 5 years. So the next time the district will be looking at that will be in 2020. And that itemizes out a list of all the scope that, needs to be addressed. So as you can see, even building in this project that has no increase, there is also still a drop-off out in 2023, which leaves, options for the districts, a good financial position that you'll be in to start to tackle some of those needs in the future, off of whatever the building condition survey turns up. Especially, if you look at that first scenario where you're not using all the reserves, you're gonna have some money set aside as well as this future drop-off, so you'll be in a pretty good spot to start to look at some of those needs as well.
Excuse me, do we know that there's nothing on the current list that wouldn't be better off being done sooner than later? Elliot, is there any items in the?
No, nothing of extreme urgency right now. That could change
Okay.
year to year.
I mean, I guess I'm asking if we added, say, another 3 million to do whatever project that was most, in need of, this whole picture wouldn't really change, except that out to the right there, those bars would just go up a little, right?
Right, so the bars would go up a little. If, if you're gonna add 3 million, we would probably have to we might have to grab some more of that reserve too to keep it
Right.
no impact. But we could, the good thing, what these two options show you tonight is they kind of give you the range
Okay.
of, we can fit within this existing structure with a project that goes up to 24 million if we use all of the reserves, or with a project that's 14 million, we only need 2 million of the reserves, and then we can kind of, play around in that gray area in between to say, if you decide that your needs are 18 million of construction or 17 million, then we could update these schedules and say, okay, based on 17 million, you need 2.5 or 3 million of reserves, and then it still fits at this structure and leaves you that future drop off, but doesn't raise taxes.
Okay. I kind of get the feeling that 14 million is kind of an arbitrary number to start, and that there might be other things that would make more sense to do within the framework, especially if adding that still doesn't increase taxes. So just something to think about.
Right. Yeah, I think it was kind of like a ballpark that we were trying to give the range of options,
Okay.
and then as you kind of define that final scope with your architect over the next month or two, then we could always update this report before the board has to formally take action, just to give
Okay.
you the comfort that what you're really looking at still fits within the structure.
Fine.
Okay.
Thank you.
So then, just real quick, the scenario 2, we have the same 3 charts for you. So we show on the capital reserve, we now got 7 million instead of the 1,980,000. In column C, we're paying back principal of 17,350,000. And the key thing to look at is in column J, the far right column, the net local share is essentially the same as in the other one. The reason for that is even though our debt service there in the middle of the page is now up to 1.6 million because we're bonding 17 million instead of 12 million, we're also getting significantly more building aid because we're putting in another 5 million of reserves, which is getting aided. So now our building aid is up to almost 1.3 million. So that's what allows us to do about 10 million more dollars worth of work for $5 million more of reserves. So this is the specific schedule for that scenario. And again, we just combine that with your existing debt service as it is. In the bar chart there, you can see those green bars all work out right about the same, and you're still at or below your current local share structure within the 17-18 budget. Any questions on that? Okay. And we did have in here just a couple appendices for you, in case you're interested. This one right here shows the history of your building aid ratio over the last 15 years or so, and then the second one is what we call the maximum cost allowance. So that just shows you how much work you can do at any individual building before it becomes non-aidable because you're over those aid ceilings. So, if you had a really large project, like if you were talking 50, 60, 70 million, we'd want to be getting a lot more definition from the architect so we could compare to these aid ceilings. But with a $14 million project, with the size of the aid ceilings the district has, it should, pretty much no matter where you put the scope, it should most likely fit within the confines of your aid ceilings, so we should be okay there. And the other thing I'll just hit on real quick, I don't think I had, this is, we didn't get this into the PowerPoint presentation, but we did just kind of rough out the timeline for you, and your architect may have already kind of mentioned this for you. But if you're looking at a February vote, just to kind of give you kind of your guidelines kind of going forward over the next few months, in terms of what's required for publications, you'd really be having to take action as a board at your December board meeting, because the first publication of the paper calling for the vote has to be 45 to 49 days prior. So that's kind of where, here we are at the end of October. If you do want to try to vote in February, then you'll have about a month and a half or so to finalize your scope and then get ready to take action, do the seeker, and do the resolutions calling for the vote. So that's kind of the timeline you're looking at for a February vote date.
Okay. Anybody have any questions for Jason? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, at this time, I have a motion for public participation, please.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on that? All in favor? If anybody would like to address the board, please step up to the mic. And if you could just state your name and...
All right. Hi, I'm Nate Craig. I'm from FDR High School. I'm the senior class president. And I'm just here today to talk about the class rank. I know when we were at the district leadership team meeting, we talked about this. And so I'd like to propose about getting rid of class rank, as I think it's hurting more kids than it's helping. As right now, we have about like 300 kids in our grade. And even if 20 of those kids are in the top 20, I think it's really labeling the rest of the class as like maybe not being good enough, even though like a lot of kids put in 4 years of hard work. And I think the ranking system, it creates this cutthroat environment that's like pitting kids kind of like against each other, and makes the kids just outside the top 20, like the 21s, 22s, feel like less, even though the grade point average is really just insignificant in between those spots. So I'd just like to say, like, within the top 20, there's problems with the ranking system. There's like a lot of pressure, I feel like, on kids to maintain their position, which in turn causes them to focus less on like taking like harder classes and maintaining their position. And a lot of kids like are concerned with their class rank because they think it has a lot to do with like getting into colleges. But if you really look at like most colleges like Harvard or like Yale, they don't actually ask for your class rank. And even David Hawkins, he's the head of the Department of Education and Content Policy for the National Association for College Admissions. He said that because it really isn't a direct measure of student achievement, like a lot of high schools are getting rid of class rank. And also like students don't necessarily have to even take hard classes to get like higher in the class rank, because if you take like AP classes and it only has like a factor of 1.06, you might not do as well as someone who takes a reading class with and gets 100. Also, there's like all the kids who are outside the top 20 who are like, maybe like angry or like frustrated, who could, because they may only be like really 2 points behind somebody, but they're like number like 80 or something. So, they don't really feel good because, it's like stressful on their mind. And I just feel like, I guess, moved by this because I feel like with the top 20, the school district like kind of like condones like a social hierarchy, because the top 20, they get like their own like yearbook page, a dinner. I mean, they get to sit up on the stage, so they're really like, I don't know, like the correct word is like just put out there like in front of everyone, and I don't think it's like a good atmosphere for our school to have, especially since most of these kids, you know, are coming from like better socioeconomic backgrounds, and the like reward itself should just be that higher education and, you know, being educated. So, you know, a lot of these kids even might not like be at school, you know, like I've been okay, you know, I'm number 17, I'm okay, you know, I'm okay, I like doing a multiple choice question, I can like write some stuff on some paper, and I'm okay at school. But a lot of people, you know, they're either, you know, maybe creative, or they can cook or sew or like do actual things, and they're not rewarded. So I think if, you know, just if our goal is to graduate more kids, you know, get them to be critical thinkers, we should focus more on school than like the ranking system. So I'm hoping to like come to the next board meeting with like a survey or like some data on how many kids really are supporting the ranking system and are against, and some other voices besides myself, and maybe some like parents or teachers, and maybe just try and get it on the agenda or something. So those are just my thoughts.
Would anybody else like to, you know how public participation works, right? You talk,
Yeah.
and somebody else talks, and then we close it, and then
Yeah.
we comment. So if you're done, is there
Yeah,
anybody
yeah,
else?
I'm okay.
If there's anybody else who would like to address the board? No? Can I have a motion to close public participation, please?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion on that? All in favor? Okay, now we get my personal feeling is that I'm okay with a student-oriented survey, and as long as the entire student body this is something, I mean, whatever your grades are, there's always going to be a 1, a 2, or 3, or 4. I mean, that's not any question. Yeah.
I'm not like trying to like.
I know, I understand. I guess maybe you ought to have some parents on this committee too. They may have some parents that really push, and others are totally surprised when their child comes home and says, "Oh, number 8." Really? But I think it's worth discussing. I think you should get all the information you can, bring it up to the student council, have that background work done, and then come back and talk to us. Would be my take on that. I don't know. Anybody else?
Yeah, I'd like to hear from the administrators as to what they see the value of it, and if there's something
That too, yeah.
that there's
Very good.
a side to it that we don't know. I mean, you know, it's been out there for a long time. You know, who does use it? I believe that, for instance, Dutchess Community College, there are scholarships available to the
Top 10. Top 10.
top 10, you know, so there's
Well, no, top 10%.
top 10%.
Top 10%.
Yeah, so,
Which is more than 20, you know.
right,
yeah,
so
yeah.
More like 35, yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess I don't fully understand what it's
The
used
value.
for and how it's used for.
Well,
I
I
can
think Mr. Party's it's kind of transitioning. If you'll remember, in last year, he made a big deal about the number of students that had above a 90 average, which
Mhm.
I think is
Yeah.
perhaps more significant for a school, and not that there are, whatever their grades are for the top 20, but that 100, say, out of 300 had an average over 90. That, to me, would be significant for community members, or if people wanted to move here and they wanted to know how well the students did, something like that. And I would guess, and it's only a guess, that the top 20 and the dinners and all that came as a way to try and reward students. I guess reward isn't a good enough word, but sometimes you do things thinking one thing and something opposite results from that. But
But I view that as an academic reward, right? I mean, in athletics, you reward the top athlete with something, and the top, the winning team you reward. In academics, what do you do?
I have a few things to say. As far as the yearbook goes, as Nate mentioned, there's photos for the top 20, and there's the dinner. But the sports teams, the varsity club, puts on a dinner for all the athletes. They get several pages in the yearbook. So I feel that this is also some sort of an academic award for the students to get recognized.
And also, you talked about a social issue with it, but sports people are rewarded constantly and announced over, and that we do have that issue, and many schools have what we call the jocks, and there's these issues in the school, so I'm not sure I'm balancing the top 20. As for the dinner, that's where has always been parent provided. It's a potluck. It's not like a big sports dinner and the sports banquet. That is something that parents of the top 20 put together, and it's kind of a reward. There is something the Rotary Club does, but that's outside of the school. As for, we do have to find a way to reward our top students somehow. Whether as we recognize the top 10%. I mean, my school, when I graduated, we recognized anyone above 80. They had a special braid they wore. The top 10%, they had something different that they wore. But we should do something with it. As for schools, there is some schools that do not recognize the SAT, or you can choose not to, and it's based on your class position, and they'll take that into account instead of the SATs. So there is some give and take on schools. I'm going to based on that.
Right now, the class rank is actually a required section on the Common App application. So you have to fill out your class rank and whether you're in the top 10% or not. Yeah. There's a little spot that says rank. And then it's also a very large space for scholarship money for students. I know as a non-athlete, the majority of my personal money, and I assume a large portion of Nate's scholarship money, will also come from their class ranking. So that's another thing to take into account.
Okay, maybe I misunderstood, but I didn't think we were discussing, I mean, there always will be a rank. We're not discussing whether or not the rank, and I'm sure guidance will still know that, and that can go on your thing. I think what he's asking for is not to make such a big deal out of it that it causes stress among the students, and I'd like to hear from the students first.
Well, I would kind of like to, we're dealing with the top 20 in their recognition, and we're going to go to the general population of the school, and that's a small percentage of the population, and that's the same way then we should say to the school, do we recognize sports athletes, and do we take that out? We shouldn't just single one. We should say on public recognition, we should be looking at the whole issue then.
So that's worth.
I just point out, a lot of the recognition for the athletes at the end of the senior year is based on participation and stick-to-itiveness, not necessarily on achievements of individual recognition as a basketball player, as a baseball player, as a softball player, whatever it is. But have you participated multiple years in the programs? You have something you decided you liked, you stayed with, and you showed diligence in staying with it.
So then we don't recognize the people that are kids who have stayed up with their grades and for multiple years?
I don't know of anything that particularly recognizes that. I think that's something significant.
Well,
we have one recognition. The other one that I remember is that we do recognize attendance.
Right, but I'm saying for your academic achievement, it has to be sustained to be really in the top of the class. In the top 10%. You have to sustain it over 4 years.
No, but we're mentioning athletic, so we're comparing academic recognition to sports recognition. But in academics, it's pure, how high did you achieve as a student in that subject, whereas the athletic program recognizes how long that you could stay with the programs that you liked and work with it. You didn't have to be a starter even, you just had to be part of the program and maintain your ability to be on the roster of those programs. So it's a, you know, it creates, I think the athletic recognitions, except for the 2 or 3 scholarships that are offered at the end, which are recognized as, this student is being recognized as the top this or the top that, is among all the things that, but the other ones don't produce or generate the kinds of stress that I do see coming from students comparing their grades, the last grades the junior year and the first grades the senior year, saying, you know, I've got a 0.2% lead or a 0.06% lead, you know, and what's going on and those kinds of things, you know, and it is significant to me to point out that, like, as our young gentleman pointed out, that, you know, you could be 2 points below the top student, and now you're down at 80 at the 81st student. You know, the concentration is amazing at Roosevelt the last couple of years, and the number of percentages of the students that achieved a 90 cumulative average for all of their courses.
Still think we need to recognize our students that are achieving. And to say we're just going to roll it out, I can understand, say, top 10%, and we recognize those. But we need to be doing something and not just take it away.
I'm not questioning it.
Well, I'm thinking over what you said before about if everybody voted and, you know, how's that going to turn out. But when you do your survey, if you know, say, the top 50 and find out what they think about it, whether they think the recognition is something that's what they're working for, or are they just working to get the best grades possible to get into the best school as they want to.
Well,
There's
it's
a whole
something
bunch
to
of
find
things
out.
you could ask.
And find out something that parents also think.
Well, that's why I said they ask to have parents involved in that also. But I will tell you, some don't even know. Some are the reason why there's so much stress on the students. But
As long as we're talking about student stress, one way to decrease that might be to not announce the rankings until January when they're finalized. Because as of now, Nate and I know our class ranks, but we don't know what they'll be in January when they're officially listed. So there's a lot of
And they do
stress
change.
to
They don't-
just,
they don't-
just stay
they don't
where you
change it
are.
often or very far, but they do change.
No, but there's enough of a drop that for like whoever is number 20 to have the stress of falling to 21, or whoever is 1 to have the stress of falling to 2 or 3. And I think that's when the competitiveness comes out.
Well, okay. My son was 2 in the start of school, and he dropped to 3. He could care less.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't care. In fact, I think he wanted to drop to 3, so he didn't have to give a speech. But
So
it's
you're
different-
aware of
it's
your
different for
ranking
different-
and your grade point
Yeah,
at this
absolutely.
point?
Yes, as of now.
And you can find out how close, how tight it is for the position above and position below you?
That's more of that's confidential as far as teachers and guidance counselors sharing, but students talk, so.
Because I could see that influencing what students did for their first semester of senior year, to not jeopardize it by, you know, going in over their head or taking something that,
You don't know until about 5 weeks into the school year, we probably found out.
Right.
So, I mean, after that, you've already chosen your
All
classes
right.
for senior year once you find out. You're in too deep to really drop much.
okay. The interesting, Doug, I don't know if you've had a chance to read the latest school board thing that came out. We got it this week. And there was that article about one of the speakers that were brought in for a presentation, and he was recommending a significant change in education in the United States, in a sense of not looking for this grade point for everything, but to allow an opportunity and to work with students to focus early on to their great interest or their great capabilities. You know, I'm a musician, I'm an artist, I'm a mathematician, I'm an engineer, and work on those courses as significant and support them in those sorts of courses, which could lead to some significant skews if you're trying to compare 30 students, but these 3 students are working for a music degree, these 3 students are working for a math degree, these 3 students are working for an art degree, these 5 students are working for a physical education program. You know, it's something I've never thought about before. I never really considered, and I, it was a wow minute to me when I read that. I said, I got to go back and read this again and see, is he really saying what I'm taking it to mean?
Yeah, he made some points, but the state of New York is going to have to change the education for that to work.
I know.
And the chances of that happening are not good.
And I don't know what the chances of colleges admitting students are. I don't know how significant the colleges put on student achievement if they're, you go into schools and quite often maybe 40% of the students entering colleges are declaring a major to start with. But I don't know how much significance the college admissions programs put on to the grades by factoring that interest to the grades in that are significant for that course. That'd be something too that's got to be.
They factor quite a bit in when I'm talking to one about the course. What courses you took in your senior year? Did you take the easier courses in the senior year? And your selection will be less of a choice. They want to see a rigorous schedule in your senior year, and then they do look at your grades.
They tend to care more about the rigor of your course selection than they do about grades.
Right. That I did get from the interviews. I've been through those programs for 8 kids. And the other significant thing that I gleaned from, and actually for the first 3 or 4, and then I had the interviewers speak up more directly, is that the class participation, activities and things and involvement in the schools, like the guy says, what we don't want here is a student that comes here and is going to be buried in a corner somewhere in the library or in their room, just dealing with the courses they're taking and achieving significant accomplishments in that grade, but not participating in the school as a whole. He says, because the schools can fall apart very quickly without the activities that involve all the students and without the participations in all the activities they encourage.
Okay, I think we need more information.
But, we need more things, and, we're getting on a discussion without having the survey.
Yeah. I think we could do this all night, but if Nate's going to step up to the plate on that, when you're ready to come back, come back.
Interesting enough, at this point of the year, you're up against a rather strange schedule too. We've got 1 meeting in November,
Right.
and we've only got 1 in December.
Yeah, well, you're not suggesting we change everything this year. You're talking about a gradual change for the following year. I wouldn't recommend changing anything that's already set, but we can discuss about that too. But, get all your ducks in a row, get all your input, students, teachers, administrators, parents. Sure you got time for this? You got to keep your class rank up, Oh, sorry. Well, we're already a half an hour over what we said that we were going to. You said we had to keep to the 30 minutes, right? Right? Really? Oh, no, okay. All right. Board subcommittee reports. We got any? Aren't any that I know of. Okay, good. Okay, we put on an item for board retreat discussion, where when we talked about our goals, although we didn't make a goal of doing a retreat, we did talk about a retreat. And as I was discussing it with Greer, it occurred to us that a long-range financial planning retreat might be something good, since although I think we've done fairly well over the years with our finances, I don't think we've ever, as a board, done a true long-range financial plan. And I was thought maybe if we had a retreat, we could have that as a subject. I just wanted everybody to weigh in on that, whether you think that's a good idea or not.
I think it's a good idea.
And the I think the logical people to do that would be the the business officials organization, whatever it, NYASBO.
Yeah, actually, I would recommend that we use our financial planners for that. I've been taking some classes through the school business officials.
Okay.
They do have classes geared for the actual people in the business office, not
Mhm.
really anything for a board as a whole. So I was talking to Jason about it a few weeks ago, and he said that they could do something
Okay.
for financial planning. They could meet with the board, you know, at a retreat and help us put together a plan that we could then update year to year.
Okay. I mean, if anybody, should we keep investigating it, then, Jay put a calendar in case, where is it? It was there a minute ago. I hit the wrong one.
Yep.
Yeah. So we should also think about when each of us is available. I know, being retired, I'm pretty much available anytime, but that's not true of at least the three of us here. So if we could all consider a time frame and what days are good, or I'm assuming it'll be a one-day workshop, like, yeah. So if we could come up with some consensus of what days people are available, especially the people that have real jobs.
So you're talking a full day of something, or at night, or?
The last one we had at night, can we do it at, is it enough time?
Yeah, I think so, because it would really just be, I think, reviewing which factors we have to consider for a plan, and how we gather that information, and what that looks like for us.
But there's no way we can develop a plan in just a few
No.
hours.
No, but we could talk about what it takes to do the plan.
So it would take several
Oh,
meetings
yeah,
and to
yeah,
develop.
yeah,
a
no, I
plan.
meant, but the structure and what we should be looking into and why, I think is what we want to get out of a retreat.
Yeah, remember, you can't make decisions during the
That's right,
retreat.
you
The
can't make a
retreat is
decision anyway.
only for the purposes of learning
Right.
how to do something, not to actually do it, so.
Okay, so I'm hearing that this is a good idea, so we'll work on a date and getting a presenter. Okay, thank you. That brings us to, hold on. Policy Committee recommendations. These are these are the ones with the minor changes, right? These are all, okay. All right. Just so to update everybody, what we're asking, what the policy committee is asking is to update the policies that we reviewed that had minor changes or no changes, so that we can put into our policy online that we have reviewed those. So may I have a motion for 9.3? Well, no, we're not, that's not later, that's later, I'm sorry. Oh, we got the consent agenda.
So this is just discussion.
Yeah, this is discussion. We do have a, I'm sorry. That's fine, I need people. That brings us to the consent agenda then. Wonderful. I have a motion for the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion there? All in favor? You have a discussion?
Well, just a point, one item that retired Netherwood teacher Susan Joseph made contact with Betty Harrell from the American Association of University Women, and she'll be taking the repurposed books from Netherwood to waiting rooms, laundromats, food banks, family court, and other places where children wait.
Oh.
So it's just a beautiful little
Nice.
thing to share.
Oh, that's what those
buried
books-
in the
that's where those
consent
books are
agenda.
going? Oh,
Yeah,
all
isn't that
right.
nice?
Oh, okay, that's very
Yeah.
nice. Yeah,
So thank you, Susan.
that's great. Okay, all in favor? Opposed, thank you. That should bring us to, where are we here?
11, new business?
11-1. May I have a motion for special education placements, please?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
I've reviewed the pack and recommend its adoption as presented.
Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Okay, so this is the actual list of the minor or no change things. Oh, can I have a motion for 11.2, first reading of policy updates?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on that? Any
Yeah,
questions?
on these policies that we're retiring, are they incorporated in anything else or that we're retiring?
They are either incorporated or are recommended by NISBA to be deleted.
And sometimes they're in law. Sometimes they're just very clearly in law, so they recommend you
Okay.
just not, you don't need a policy on top of that.
Like smoking on the premises is not allowed.
Like that,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah. Okay. All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. And motion for 11.3, lead evaluator recertifications.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on that one? All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Okay, this one, may I have 11.4, adopt the modified Board of Education meeting calendar. That's the one that we approved that we were going to delete the
So
second
moved.
meeting in November. Yeah, I have a second.
Second.
No. Any discussion there?
So the only change is that last meeting in November,
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Wow. Okay. May I have a motion to enter public
Can I,
participation?
Can I move to reconsider on the, on that meeting? I have a question to discuss about that. When Jason talked about multiple, then we have to have something decided by December.
Mhm.
Are we going to not have enough time? We have to make that decision in the one meeting in December?
No, we can make it in the November, I mean, we'll have a discussion in November meeting as well.
Okay,
We have a first meeting, the first meeting in November still
then we have the
stands.
second. Okay,
All right. Okay,
I rescind my motion.
there you go. Can I have a motion to enter public participation?
So moved?
Second.
Any discussion there? All in favor? Nate, you got anything else you want to, do your chance? This is your chance. No? Okay. You got enough work to do, that's right. I have a motion to exit
So moved.
public participation.
Second.
Any discussion on that one? All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. There are, as far as I know, no other matters deemed necessary by the board. There is no need for an executive session. May I have a motion to adjourn, please?
So moved?
Second.
Any discussion on that one? All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. We're now adjourned.